Hey everybody, this is PD from Spinner Rack, and today I'm doing a video on the Heroes Return Fantastic Four series. Now, I think, I don't know, before Heroes Return, before Heroes Reborn, Tom DeFalco and Paul Ryan were doing a 6-year run, almost as long as or longer than when Byrne was on the book. And regretfully, despite some great art, maybe some exciting moments, the book started to truly slip. Now, I pointed out that it was still a top seller in the 70s, even though books like Spider-Man and the Hulk had overtaken him. And as far as being the official book for the Marvel Universe, the Avengers kind of took that spot from all the top writers doing it. And then the X-Men in the 80s, even though John Byrne made it number 2 in the book, it really slipped post Englehart doing it. There was some, for me, there was a highlight when Walter Simonson was doing it, but at the same time, it still wasn't a huge seller outside of the new FF issues. And then Tom DeFalco took it over, and it basically stayed there for many years with Tom DeFalco. And then the last 2 issues, Carlos Pacheco took it over. And then the suits were like, hey, these books are broken. They gave them to the Image guys. Heroes Reborn had, not Reburned, Reborn had, what was it? We had the Captain America and the Avengers by Rob Liefeld, and we had Iron Man and the Fantastic Four by Jim Lee and company. Iron Man was done by Lee, Wills Portacio, and Scott Lobdell, right? So the Fantastic Four was the most successful of the books. Now, it's kind of a soft FF run. It's only 6 issues. I don't really count the ones without Jim Lee, but he did an okay sort of book. Not great, but it's just okay. Visually strong at some points, a little sometimes too busy. And his read is a little extra skinny, but as skinny as probably Byrne was early in the run. But one of the hard things to do is to capture the thing. And unlike Jim Lee's thing isn't my official kind of thing that I like. But one of the things I have to give him, that his thing, we have leading to a classic Jim Lee shot. This thing looked like a monster, right? So I can give him kudos for that. He could do a later shot, which I don't have with me, which is funny. That's the thing. The hard part, even though he has chest muscles, thing should have not have any chest muscles, but he at least looks scary, right? And what was it? And there's another shot where he runs into Alicia, and he looks sort of more humorous, right? This is a little too muscular, but he was still at least could be scary, right? So this went for 13 issues, and Jim Lee bowed out of becoming editor-in-chief. And so at the same time, Marvel, the people in the office, decided they were going to do more retro stuff to get the fans back. So they, of course, brought all these titles back. Kurt Busiek doing, what was it? Avengers and Iron Man. The Avengers were a big success. Iron Man, I don't think was that big of a success, but he was on there for a decent amount of time. And then we had, obviously, the Fantastic Four and Captain America. With Captain America by Mark Waid. And the Fantastic Four, Scott Lobdell was shifting from the X-Men and kind of trying to do the X-Men treatment with the Fantastic Four. Now, I was scared that he was going to ruin it, but they had Alan Davis here, right? And I went because Scott Lobdell took over after Byrne was kind of pushed out of the X-Men. So I wasn't too keen early on with Scott Lobdell. I got kind of used to him and Fabian Nicieza doing it, and they did, okay run, but they were kind of pushed out of the X books. But since he was kind of a name, they gave him the Fantastic Four to take over. Now, if you look at this cover, I think they were on the right path. Only problem is that Marvel is like, okay, we got that, but we're gonna get Alan Davis and only do 3 issues, and we want Chris Claremont to take over this book, right? Because we got Chris in here. He was like one of like a chief editor in there, not the editor in chief, but he's kind of handling some books. So he was kind of some sort of editorial job at Marvel. So they also gave him a title to work on, which was a Fantastic Four. So we only had the 3 first issues, right? And when I was worried about him doing the X-Men approach, this is my last bit of my intro, his X-Men approach was just to add new villains, not to change the characters, right? And we have Alan Davis helping to create these new characters, which I don't think any of them were used after this. Maybe, I got the villains right here, right? But we'll get to them, right? So we got a nice wraparound cover. We start with the Mole Man, right? And he is with his people, and there's only certain moments where Alan Davis does Kirby, but the way he draws the Kirby stuff is still amazing, right? Like, look at this, right? The Mole Man and his minions, these frog type, lizard type characters, the big monster from the FF cover, right? You're gonna take over the world, but at the same time, they know the Fantastic Four is back, and they a tribute to the Fantastic Four, right? Viva la Fantastic. Now the Fantastic Four, right? They're doing some sort of weird testing. So this is one of the cool parts to capture what was in the original book, right? Where you have Reed having Ben do some weird testing and has some high-tech stuff. He's on skis. This is a really kind of Kirby type thing. He's at the edge of this. They're talking over stuff. And then the Human Torch comes out of nowhere and starts the race, sending the Ben on his skiing. He's skiing down there. He turns on the rockets, and as he's going up, the Human Torch follows along, but Ben decides to take him along for the fun, and they start to become a big snowball. Reed, of course, this also was something Byrne wanted to do, playing up the absent-minded professor. We got Franklin in there, still 4.5, which is great. He would grow up pretty quickly after this, right? But Reed's not paying attention to snowballs coming right at them. Let's go right back to one thing. Alan Davis kind of modified the outfits so the wide collar would connect to the floor, right? So it wouldn't kind of land into the wrong area, which is pretty cool. Byrne kept a decent amount of space between them, but somehow kept the chest up. So Alan Davis, with his style, has kind of incorporated it into one thing, right? So they're in trouble, and Sue stops them, right? And then Franklin is happy to see his uncles, but then as they get into a fight, Sue gives them the business. Reed snatches his boy, and they're off while Sue's giving them the business, right? And then some polar region, meager accommodations. At the same time, in France, we have this construction going on where there's some people that are fighting against it. And there's one woman who is, her name is Yvette, right? She's like fighting against this technology that they're trying to do and building over this area, right? I think it's Yvette Diamande, right? And she goes in there and it's like this Kirby kind of relic area, right? And of course they're trying to open it, and then she's against it and she's trying to stop them, right? As obviously I didn't say Alan Davis, one of my favorite artists, right? And I already did the nail, so here we go, another one from Alan Davis. And as they go, the artifact starts to react and cracking, right? They're in Antarctica, and they talk about not having the Baxter building because the what's those guys? The Thunderbolts have taken over the Baxter building, right? So Ben isn't too happy about it, but Sue was just asking if she could help with the food, right? And they start talking over different things, but she's there for him. And then this is another cool thing. So one of the things I always wanted was to see is that being with Reed is like getting your master's degree. You see Johnny, who's already created his own what's that thing? His own fantastic car, is helping Reed on the classic one, right? And you see Franklin helping. So all this is all to the good because it's really interesting how he's just trying to. The hardest character to kind of do is Reed, and he's really trying to keep Reed as the lead, having some humorous moments with the thing, Johnny being involved and not being a total, the flighty character, and showing that he has some smarts, right? And they have something to check on some energy, and that starts lighting up, and Reed is like, it's pretty bad. So then we go back to this artifact, this relic thing, and it's releasing, and it connects with these people, and it turns these guys into the Ruined. We got Bar, Exalt, and Stem. The Stem, right? So they're taking over these guys. Oh, there's more of them in the back though, right? But these are the leads, right? And they say that she's still there, and she's like, "What do you want from me?" And they just asked her to touch the sword, and something happens to her, right? And they all kind of bowing to her. All right, so then we see these couple guys trying to figure out what's going on, ask some questions. This guy looks like Tintin, and we find out it's actually Reed and Sue in disguise, right? And Reed is tracking, right? And then Ben and the torch just sort of hanging out. So French lady approaches Johnny, so they go out for a thing, and Ben escapes. Doesn't want to be a fifth wheel. He walks away, and he gets hit with some lettuce. He's telling him not, and Alan Davis kind of leans more towards how Byrne does the brow. He's a little more humorous than Burns' one, right? But these guys yelling in French obscenities at him, and realize it's the Rue de Fancy. It's Yancey. It's the Yancey Street out in France, right? Another gag, and I think Scott Lobdell was a stand-up comedian for a little while. I think he also has done the Happy Death Day movies, which I try to stay away from. But anyway, this is all happening, and then as the sort of ruin starts to create, the Reed sends out the flare, and then Johnny leaves the French girl, and Ben is not too happy about it, and they make their way. We see Reed and Sue struggling with these creatures, and Ben is happy he finally gets to clobber something, right? And then he sees this chick come out of nowhere. He talks, and he's gonna be like, "Hey, he's old-fashioned, not gonna hit her," and she hits him, knocks him a mile away. And Sacred Flippin' Blue, which I cracked up on, right? This one's taking way longer, right? And Reed figures it out. This is all a distraction, right? Right. He said, "You'll ruin everything." And then he gets in there to stop things, and he realized what the true plan was. She took him the sword so she could become, they wanted her to become the martyr for these guys. It's like, martyr? I don't remember that word. And they're trying to overload it to stop them from having to do that. The Torch uses his flame power to hold these guys back while Sue is trying to overload this thing. The Torch is doing his best, and he sends all his energy into that thing. He's about to get tossed in there, and then the girl saves Johnny, right? So even though he's a little calling her babe, they have a moment together, right? And Reed is kind of caught up in this thing, right? And he's about to tell Sue to do something, but Stem is in there, and he takes out the Fantastic Four, right? And they have a talk, and this is, instead of, they've got the Fantastic Four captured, the Fantastic Four fallen, and he says, the problem, you guys can't count, right? And then Reed is like, quickly, Ben, shush. Hurl the steel and plastic pyramid into the portal. The triangular harmonics inherent in the design should, whatever. You said hurl, I hurl. Simple, it's simple that way. I'm simple that way, right? Tosses it and stops it, right? Everything went back to normal. Everyone but Homegirl, right? So she's there to protect us, and Reed kind of reinforces that so they don't tear down the thing, right? And the town people are happy, and they celebrate the Fantastic Four. Long live the Fantastic Four, right? And you get this nice end, right? So that was issue 1. Issue 2 is definitely a favorite. Welcome Home, Invisible Woman, die, right? And they're struggling with this weird thing. So once again, Reed has some funky technology that he is like trying to develop. Somehow Sue's is fine, but Ben and Johnny's is a mess, right? So Sue is chilling, she loves it, and at the same time, the chair interacts with Franklin, and as Sue goes to get Franklin, her chair interacts with the rest of them, and we get caught in this. Reed is still caught up in his business, and the whole thing blows, and Ben is still upset that they're at the docks and not at home, right? So he was, I think, developing a different location for the Fantastic Four, that they had all these other places. So right now they're staying in the warehouse, right? And they get confronted by someone, but it's actually Willie Lumpkin's daughter, and they decide they're going to help her deliver the mail, right? And Sue has to give Reed a talking to for not telling them about moving here to this warehouse, right? He thought it would make sense, right? So she kind of gives them, they're okay. I think it's a great idea. But someone is watching and can see their heat signature, right? But he's invisible. Right? And we have these monkeys, but then at the same time, these monkeys can talk, right? So looks like it's going to be a Super Ace, which I was always a fan of. And Ben is looking at this display that Alicia had, so we have a sad moment. And Alicia, well, we'll reveal that later. That's what's going on this period, right? So Torch runs into him and says, "Hey, we should go on a date." And he's like, "No," and just like does a gag. Turns him into a snowman, and they're off and running again. So they're getting Franklin ready for bed, and they're having a tender moment. And someone sees there and says, "Tragic." And for some reason, the invisible woman can hear it, but not anyone else. And only Sue can hear and see Iconoclast, right? So he's about to attack them, and she uses a force field, and she's ready to fight back. But and Reed doesn't even second guess it, right? He goes out there to help and tries to go against the energy signature, and seems to be untangible, right? Right. So Franklin hits the flare. They're off. And this is cool that when he stretches, he just doesn't always become thin. Sometimes his muscles just stretch out, which is a cool effect. So Reed can help. So his idea is to take Sue out of the action, but Iconoclast is just hammering him, right? So Sue gets in a fight, but then the Iconoclast can break down her force fields, right? And then so what's he fighting? Looks like he's fighting no one. It's like there's a footprint there. He's fighting a footprint. So he asks Johnny to use his heat to kind of reveal that, and use the heat to reveal it. And Ben is like, "Oh, something hit," but it doesn't work that way. And he can pass through and hurt. Those have like really cool effects, right? I wasn't really a fan of comic effects, but visual effects, but this one, it really works. So Sue protects, and the team has to fall back. So Sue has been pushed further and further and further. The only problem that the husband is seeing this creature, whatever it is, they're interacting with water, right? Would be something that have a large effect on them, right? So they stopped it, but then something else is staring at them. We don't know who it is. So this is a lot of setup of some cool stuff that's going to happen in the book. And the next issue is going to be no different, right? I missed the gag early in the first issue where Reed says images and everything, right? But anyway, let's keep going. This is the last issue of Scott Lobdell's short tenure on the book. He did do the plot for 4, but then they were, as I said, he was pushed off to let Chris Claremont take it over. And he said this is the same thing that happened on the X-Men. So he wasn't too happy. So they are ready to go. And Reed is taking apart Iconoclast. And they're like, "Stop it." And they're like, "No, I'm just gagging. This is just a simulator to show you." So he's trying to figure out what this guy's made of, but not actually dissecting him, right? But see, this is what's going on with Alicia. She is hanging out with the Silver Surfer during this period by Mark DeMatteis and Ron Garney. I think Ron Garney wasn't on it for too long, but he did a few decent, gorgeous issues, which you should check out. All right, so we go back to we saw the Empire State University. I think that's where Spider-Man last fought the apes, right? And one of the apes gets free. And it's the super apes. Now, the apes seemingly can all talk, but the megalomaniac Red Ghost can't. Right? So and Reed gets a call. And the call, he said from the call there was a stress analysis. That means that he's going to check it out, right? So he's checking out his own because his team are, with at this event, right? So we see them just destroying stuff. Columbo has a big plan, right? And this one's a shapeshifter. And we see Reed using stretches the way he would never do. In the current run, uses his eye to see. It's terrible, but hey, when you need to do what you need to do, right? And they got this plan, release toxins into the atmosphere. And Reed approaches. He starts fighting them, and he's got a skill, but at the same time, the apes all now, the powers are all mixed up, right? And he doesn't know why this is happening, right? And they got him to the corner, about to take out Reed. Then Reed ultimately stops the last one, right? And then Fantastic Four gets there. The only one they don't have to stop is the Red Ghost, but he is turned into an imbecile, right? And Reed is wondering why their powers kind of morphed and their personalities have warped together. Could the Fantastic Four suffer a similar fate? C is really setting up a lot of stuff for his future on the book, and a lot of new characters, which all look cool with Alan Davis doing it, right? And this is where, in Tibet, this is where the Doctor Doom went to, and these are the monks that helped him become Doctor Doom. And someone has killed all of them. This is where the mask was made, I believe, right? But at the same time, we meet the Crucible, and I've never seen Alan Davis's design for it. I've only seen Scott De La Rocca's design. I wish I could see Alan Davis, but it was a great start. But Alan Davis had, I think he had just done the Nail, and he wanted to do Kill Raven, but he wanted to do something which he knew would be profitable post the Clandestine, right? So we have this, it would lead into Terminus and the Crucible and the Mole Man, right? We got this nice pinup, and I think past this point, Alan Davis, he'd done the end also. Scott Lobdell never has gone back to the Fantastic Four. At the same time, we had the Fantastic Four, the world's greatest comic magazine, which was supposedly them trying to do the last issue, the last story arc for Stan and Jack, which was mainly by Eric Larson and what's his name? Eric Larson and Bruce Timm. They do the majority of layouts and some of the inking, but they have a lot of other people helping them out, right? It's kind of doesn't necessarily hit the mark, but there's moments there, right? Then the next run after Chris Claremont, which I would say the most notable, is the Carlos Pacheco, R.I.P. Carlos Pacheco. His run on Fantastic Four, which has been wholly forgotten. He did just some decent stuff. I don't like that he brought back the baby and made her Valeria, but it's now a permanent thing in FF, right? And then post him, they had Mark Waid and Mike Wieringo. It's a classic run that everyone likes. I think both runs that took place at that point all got the fact that Reed should be kind of the guy up front, and Ben and Johnny will steal as much attention as possible. I don't know if there's anything notable during either of these periods outside of the pregnancy and Sue being like just a top part of it, and then of course they had some specials. So past this point, the FF was kind of rolling. Byrne was almost talking about trying to do a Fantastic Four: The Hidden Years to kind of fill in the gaps in between the first couple F issues, but that never happened. So it was a good, decent period for the Fantastic Four, right? So there you go. You got the Scott Lobdell and Alan Davis run that started so brilliantly and ended after issue 3. Spinner Rack out.